All right. I just finished watching a video from this guy named Cole Hastings. He seems to be doing a lot of self-development, self-improvement, self-actualization type of work. Really cool stuff. He's been doing lots of experiments with like journaling and NoFap and a lot of this stuff. And he's on his spiritual journey as well, of course. And I watched a video from him that I've been seeing in my recommended a lot on YouTube called "Stop Trying to Lose Your Ego." And I was very intrigued by it. And I watched it, and I just want to give my thoughts on it, guys. I think he brings up a lot of good points, but he also completely misses the point. I mean, so just off the bat, I mean, you're literally watching a video of an ego justifying why you should have an ego. Like it's ridiculous. It's hilarious, right? What does the ego do? The ego strives for survival. That's its function. It's gonna do whatever it can to survive. And of course, it's gonna convince you that yeah, the ego's actually pretty good. You should keep me. You should keep me around. Um, when really, if you're trying to get deep into your spiritual journey, you gotta let go of the ego. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. The ego is what causes the suffering. So if you don't want to suffer anymore, well, you're gonna have to let go of the ego. And it's just it's just ridiculous that the benefits that he was listing of you can use the ego to acquire wealth and money and all those kinds of things. And I mean, yeah, sure, if you're living a lay life, obviously money is very useful. But who is it useful to? It's useful to the ego. And when you really see past the illusion that it is, I mean, you don't actually need money. You don't need money. You don't need things. You don't need literally any of that. Anything that he's listing as the benefits for ego are literally just distractions. They're absolutely useless when getting to the deeper levels of finding self, capital S self. Like, who wants this stuff? The ego does. Who wants to survive? The ego does. Who's telling you that you should keep the ego and not lose the ego? The ego is. So like, what are you doing? And obviously it's not easy. It's not easy stuff, but yeah, like it's circular. You just get so caught up in your own ego that you start believing your ego when it tells you, yeah, you know what? I think I gotta bring some stuff to the table. And I mean, maybe it does at a sort of surface level, but if you're really trying to get deep into this, you gotta go past that, right? It's just it's ridiculous, and obviously it goes into the benefits of not having an ego, of letting your ego go. And yes, okay, it can get a little confusing, right? Because we talk about you know trying to go for enlightenment and stuff like that, and you know who are you trying to enlighten is really the ego, but you're really trying to let go of identifying with the ego at all and realize that the you that you'll find is actually already enlightened. So it gets a little twisty there when you get deep into it. But yeah, ultimately, you gotta let go of the ego. The ego is what has all these desires and stuff. And I mean, hey, listen, you could do that. These are the thoughts that I had sort of like it had like a little in between stage before I really was like, okay, let's commit to this, the spiritual journey. I want to go all the way, sort of thing. I'm just juggling with ideas of, oh, can I keep the ego? Is the ego still useful for some things? Is there any way that I could, you know, transcend, but then also have the ego and try to play that middle ground? And it's completely counterintuitive. It really is. The whole point is that you let go of everything, including the ego. You can let go of the ego entirely, and then yeah, you just experience. You just awareness. You just experience blissfully. You don't need to attach an ego to it. It's just an I am sort of thing instead of I am this. I am Jad. I am the body. I am the mind. I am whatever. right? And you'll discover this, and you'll experience this firsthand when you ego death. And so it's getting into ego death, right? You're not trying to kill the ego. That's a very confrontational, egoic way to think about it. What you're trying to do is transcend the ego, see past the ego. Don't let the ego deter you or from holding your peace and awareness. That's what you're trying to do. See past the illusion of the ego and not identify with the ego anymore. It can still be there, sure, but it'll slowly diminish itself when you stop giving it attention, when you stop identifying with it. So this will happen a lot with thoughts. You'll have egoic thoughts, and then as you slowly through meditation and stuff dwindle that down, and stop identifying with the thoughts and having thoughts come up at all, well then there goes your ego. If you be without attributing any sort of framework to it, any sort of ego dynamic to it, well then it's just pure experience. There's nothing to there's no ego saying this is good, that's bad, I want this, I don't want this, I need this, I don't want that. That's all the ego stuff, and that's where all the suffering comes from. So listen, at the end of the day, if you want to keep suffering, listen, hold on to your ego all you want. Keep striving for material things and for money and this and that. Go ahead. Maybe you'll find an interesting balance. We're all in different places in our journeys, but I still think they all ultimately go to the same place. And that place is beyond ego. So, those are my thoughts. If you're really serious about this, stop playing yourself. Stop getting caught in your own illusions and delusions of, oh yeah, the ego's actually, nah, let go. Yeah, you know deep down that it's the way. So stop playing around about it if you're trying to be serious about this stuff. That's all for me. I'll see you next one.